What makes Midoriya's progression unique in anime isn't just the raw power increase, it's how each breakthrough built on the last one, creating a compound effect that turned self-destructive desperation into calculated mastery. From bone-shattering 100% smashes that left him hospitalized to seamlessly combining 6 inherited quirks at 120% full cowl, every phase represents both a technical leap and emotional growth. Phase 1 was brutal to watch. When Midoriya first inherited One for All, he had zero control over the stockpiled power flowing through his body. Every time he tried to use the quirk, he was essentially detonating a bomb inside his own limbs. The Delaware Smash became his signature move out of pure necessity. He'd channel 100% of One for All into a single finger, creating devastating wind pressure that could level buildings, but the recoil would shatter every bone in that finger instantly. His body simply couldn't handle the energy output. It was like trying to channel lightning through a paper tube. During the sports festival, watching him break finger after finger against Todoroki was painful. Each Delaware Smash bought him one attack, but at the cost of permanent damage. Recovery Girl had to heal him constantly, and even she started refusing treatment because she couldn't enable his self-destructive behavior. This phase taught Midoriya something crucial. Raw power means nothing if you can't survive using it. He was essentially a human artillery piece, devastating but unsustainable. The breakthrough came when All Might introduced the microwave analogy during their training. Instead of blasting 100% power like a microwave on high that burns everything, Midoriya needed to learn how to distribute that same energy evenly, like cooking on a lower setting for longer. This revelation led to Phase 2, 5% full cowl. Full cowl changed everything about how Midoriya fought. Instead of channeling all his power into single devastating attacks, he learned to spread 5% of One for All throughout his entire body simultaneously. This enhanced his strength, speed, reflexes, and durability all at once, creating a sustainable baseline that he could maintain for extended periods. The difference was night and day. During the forest training camp, Midoriya could finally engage in real combat without immediately crippling himself. He moved faster than most of his classmates, hit harder than humanly possible, and could take hits that would hospitalize normal people. More importantly, he could do this for hours without visiting Recovery Girl afterward. But 5% full cowl represented more than just technical progress. It marked Midoriya's psychological shift from imitating All Might to building his own foundation. All Might fought with overwhelming single strikes, Detroit Smash, Texas Smash, massive displays of raw power. Midoriya's full cowl was different. It was about consistency, endurance, and strategic enhancement rather than spectacular devastation. This phase proved that being a hero isn't about wielding the most overwhelming power. It's about using what you have intelligently and sustainably. The 5% baseline became the foundation that every future breakthrough would build upon. Without mastering this controlled distribution, none of the later phases would have been possible. Moving on to Phase 3, Midoriya faced a crisis that would force him to innovate in ways that truly made One for All his own. Phase 3 began with a terrifying medical diagnosis that nearly ended Midoriya's hero career before it truly started. After the muscular fight where he unleashed his 1,000% Delaware Detroit Smash, doctors examined his arms and delivered devastating news. The cumulative damage had reached a critical threshold. If he used 100% power through his arms even 2 or 3 more times, he would permanently lose all functionality in them. Recovery Girl, who had patiently healed him countless times, finally refused to continue treatment. She couldn't enable his self-destructive behavior anymore. The message was clear: find a new approach or watch your hero dreams die. This crisis forced Midoriya to make a decision that would define his fighting style forever. If his arms couldn't handle the load, he would shift the burden to his legs. This wasn't just tactical necessity, it represented something profound. For the first time since receiving One for All, Midoriya stopped trying to become a carbon copy of All Might and started forging his own path. The reasoning was sound. Legs are naturally stronger than arms, possessing significantly more muscle mass and supporting your entire body weight daily. More critically, while Midoriya had destroyed his arms repeatedly, his legs remained relatively undamaged and capable of handling higher percentages. This led to the birth of Shoot Style, a completely leg-focused fighting approach that emphasized kicks over punches. To support this radical shift, Midoriya upgraded his costume with iron armor soles that absorbed impact force and featured spring-loaded mechanisms for double strike effects. These reinforced boots allowed him to use higher percentages through his legs without the catastrophic recoil that had plagued his arm-based attacks. During this period, Midoriya also increased his full cowl baseline from 5% to 8%. 60%, a 60% increase in raw output that placed him roughly on par with Bakugo's base combat capabilities. The 8% threshold was significant because it proved Midoriya could continue growing his sustainable power level through dedicated training. With shoot style established, Midoriya began developing his first truly original techniques. The Manchester Smash used spinning heel kicks with rotational momentum to maximize impact force. The St. Louis Smash delivered devastating horizontal roundhouse kicks. These weren't variations of All Might's moves. They were uniquely Midoriya's creations that honored his mentor's naming tradition, while establishing his own combat identity. The provisional license exam showcased shoot style's capabilities. Midoriya's enhanced mobility and devastating kicks made him one of the strongest first-year students among past 500 competitors. However, the approach revealed a critical weakness: predictability. By relying almost exclusively on leg attacks, experienced opponents could focus their defense and counter his patterns more easily. Phase 4 represented a quantum leap that changed everything about Midoriya's potential. The catalyst was the Shie Hasaikai raid against Overhaul, where Midoriya experienced something unprecedented. With Ares strapped to his back, her rewind quirk actively reversed the damage as fast as he inflicted it on himself. For the first time, Midoriya could use 100% full cowl continuously without consequences. The resulting display was otherworldly. Midoriya moved so fast he kicked air hard enough to propel himself skyward like a rocket. His punches generated shockwaves that scattered Overhaul's massive fusion form. Even though Overhaul could instantly reconstruct matter, he couldn't regenerate fast enough to withstand the assault. But this wasn't sustainable. Midoriya was destroying himself faster than Eri could heal him. This battle served as both inspiration and warning, showing him what true mastery looked like while reinforcing that he wasn't there yet. The experience motivated intensive training with All Might to make permanent progress toward that glimpsed potential. By the joint training arc, Midoriya had solidified 20% as his comfortable full cowl baseline, a 400% increase from his original 5% starting point. At 20% full cowl, Midoriya's capabilities expanded dramatically. His speed surpassed most classmates, his strikes could incapacitate villains in 1 or 2 hits, and his reaction time reached superhuman levels. More importantly, he developed a hybrid percentage system, maintaining lower outputs for extended combat while spiking to 20% or higher for finishing moves. This strategic flexibility transformed Midoriya from a hit-and-run fighter into someone who could dictate battle pace and sustain pressure over time. The 20% baseline became the stable foundation that would support every future quirk awakening and percentage increase. Phase 4 proved Midoriya had graduated from promising student to legitimate hero, someone who could contribute meaningfully to serious battles rather than gambling everything on desperate attacks. Phase 5 began with one of the most shocking moments in Midoriya's entire journey. During the joint training arc's 5th round, while maintaining his standard 20% full cowl against Class 1B, something unprecedented happened. Without warning, dark whip-like tendrils erupted from his arms and began lashing out completely beyond his control. These tendrils were Blackwhip, the quirk of Daigoro Banjo, the 5th previous wielder of One for All. For the first time, Midoriya was manifesting an inherited quirk from the vestiges stored within One for All. The chaotic debut nearly endangered his own teammates until Uraraka and Shinso intervened, using their quirks to stabilize him and calm the vestiges' power. This moment changed everything about what One for All actually was. It wasn't just stockpiled strength anymore. It was an entire arsenal of abilities waiting to be unlocked. Blackwhip produces invisible dark energy strands that can bind and immobilize opponents, ensnare multiple targets for crowd control, or clamp onto environmental structures for rapid traversal. The tendrils extend at high speed and retract with tremendous force, making them effective both defensively and offensively. The quirk's arrival transformed Midoriya's combat approach completely. Instead of relying solely on explosive leg bursts for mobility, he could now swing between buildings, change direction instantly midair, and create momentumless wall runs by anchoring the tendrils. For infiltration missions, he could restrain opponents from a distance without resorting to destructive smashes. Most importantly, Blackwhip synergized perfectly with Full Cowl. The tendrils acted as energy conduits, channeling One for All power directly into the whips themselves. When Midoriya combined 30% Full Cowl with Blackwhip, the strands became hardened enough to slice through reinforced steel, a level of destructive precision impossible with smashes alone. The learning curve was brutal. Blackwhip initially responded to the vestiges' emotions rather than Midoriya's conscious control. Through intense focus training, he learned to calm the vestiges' feelings, achieve precise summoning and retraction, and synchronize his Full Cowl percentage with whip deployment for seamless energy flow. By mastering Blackwhip, Midoriya could summon up to 6 separate strands, each independently controlled, while maintaining his 30% baseline. This wasn't just a power increase, it was a complete evolution from ground-bound brawler to multidimensional combatant capable of engaging engaging enemies at any range. The emotional growth during this phase was equally significant. Midoriya had to accept that he wasn't just inheriting All Might's power, he was becoming the culmination of 8 previous users' legacies. Each vestige had their own personality, experiences, and emotional baggage that he needed to understand and integrate. Phase 6 introduced 2 more vestige quirks that fundamentally changed how Midoriya operated on the battlefield. Danger Sense, inherited from Hikage Shinomori, the 4th user, granted Midoriya an almost instinctive awareness of hostile intent within roughly a 20-meter radius. Initially, the quirk overwhelmed him with countless threat signals. Every moving object, every heartbeat triggered warnings. The sensory overload was so intense it nearly drove him to collapse during training. Through focused meditation and filtering drills, Midoriya learned to distinguish between benign stimuli and genuine threats. At 30% full Cowl, Danger Sense enabled preemptive evasion. He could sidestep attacks before they visibly launched and anticipate ambush points to nullify opponents' surprise tactics. The quirk had limitations, though. It only detected deliberate hostile intent, meaning accidental hazards or attacks from non-hostile sources could bypass it entirely. But for combat situations, it essentially gave Midoriya a form of limited precognition. Float, inherited from Nana Shimura, the 7th user and All Might's mentor, granted true levitation abilities. By dedicating about 5 to 8% of his full Cowl energy to float, while retaining 22 to 25% for the rest of his body, Midoriya achieved sustained flight capabilities. This wasn't just hovering, it was complete 3-dimensional mobility for both offense and rescue operations. Float worked seamlessly with full Cowl, allowing Midoriya to maintain his 30% baseline strength while airborne. The combination of precognition and flight elevated Midoriya's battlefield control to an entirely new level. He could operate as an omnidirectional aerial sentinel, sensing danger before it arrived and striking from any vector with superhuman speed and power. In ghost mode hit-and-run tactics, Midoriya could harpoon a target with Blackwhip, deliver a precision kick mid-air, then ascend out of counter range before opponents could react. For rescue operations, Danger Sense pinpointed threats around trapped civilians, while Float granted rapid access to high-altitude victims. The emotional significance of inheriting Float was profound. Nana Shimura represented the connection between All Might's generation and Midoriya's. She was the bridge linking past and future. Mastering her quirk meant accepting responsibility not just for All Might's legacy, but for the entire lineage of one-for-all users. By Phase 6's completion, Midoriya had transcended ground-bound combat entirely. He operated with precognitive awareness, unlimited aerial mobility, and versatile energy tendrils, a combination that made him nearly impossible to pin down or predict. The foundation was set for even greater breakthroughs ahead. Phase 7 marked Midoriya's evolution into a complete tactical weapon. By this point, he had mastered not just Blackwhip, Danger Sense, and Float, but all 6 vestige quirks inherited from One-for-All's previous users. His baseline full Cowl had increased to 45%, a power level that placed him firmly in the upper echelons of professional heroes. The 3 remaining quirks completed his arsenal in devastating ways. Smokescreen, inherited from N, the 6th user, allowed Midoriya to generate thick clouds of smoke for concealment and battlefield control. This wasn't just visual obstruction. The smoke could be directed and shaped, creating tactical advantages that complemented his other abilities perfectly. Fa Jin, from the 3rd user, enabled Midoriya to store kinetic energy from repetitive motions and release it in explosive bursts. This quirk synergized incredibly with his movement patterns, allowing him to build up energy during combat and unleash it for devastating finishing moves that exceeded even his 45% baseline output. Transmission, inherited from the 2nd user, granted the ability to change the velocity of anything he touched. He could accelerate objects to incredible speeds or bring them to complete stops instantly. Combined with his other quirks, this created tactical possibilities that were almost limitless. The strategic synergy between all 6 quirks created unprecedented combat versatility. Midoriya could use Danger Sense to detect incoming threats, Float to position himself optimally, Blackwhip to control multiple opponents, Smokescreen to obscure vision, Fa Jin to amplify his strikes, and Transmission to manipulate the battlefield itself. Each quirk enhanced the others, creating combinations that were far more powerful than the sum of their parts. During this phase, Midoriya's analytical mind truly shined. He developed complex battle strategies that utilized multiple quirks simultaneously. He might use Float to hover above enemies, Smokescreen to blind them, Blackwhip to restrain multiple targets, and Fa Jin enhanced strikes to incapacitate them, all while Danger Sense kept him aware of threats from every direction. The emotional growth during Phase 7 was equally profound. Midoriya had to learn to communicate with and understand all 6 previous users, each with their own personalities, regrets, and wisdom. He wasn't wasn't just wielding their quirks, he was carrying their hopes, dreams, and unfinished business. This responsibility weighed heavily on him, but also gave him strength and purpose beyond his own ambitions. More importantly, Midoriya began to understand that One for All wasn't just about accumulating power, it was about connection. Each user had passed on not just their quirk, but their experiences and growth. He was the culmination of 8 generations of heroism, and that legacy demanded he become something greater than any single user could achieve alone. Phase 8 represented the ultimate breakthrough, Midoriya pushing beyond what even All Might achieved in his prime. The Overdrive state emerged during the Final War Arc when Midoriya faced threats that exceeded anything the previous generation had encountered. Shigaraki, enhanced by All for One and possessing multiple quirks, represented a level of danger that required Midoriya to transcend his previous limitations entirely. In Overdrive, Midoriya could push his full Cowl output from 45% to an incredible 120%. This wasn't just a numerical increase, it was a fundamental transformation of what One for All could accomplish. At 120%, Midoriya's speed approached teleportation levels, his strength could reshape landscapes, and his durability allowed him to withstand attacks that would vaporize buildings. The term planetary scale power isn't hyperbole when describing Overdrive. Midoriya's punches generated shockwaves that could be felt for miles. His movement created sonic booms that shattered windows across entire city districts. When he combined 120% full Cowl with all 6 vestige quirks simultaneously, the resulting display of power rivaled natural disasters in terms of raw, destructive potential. But Overdrive came at a cost. The energy output was so intense that even Midoriya's conditioned body couldn't sustain it indefinitely. Each use burned through his stamina reserves and risked permanent damage if maintained too long. This forced him to use Overdrive strategically, reserving it for moments when nothing else would suffice. The emotional significance of surpassing All Might's prime was staggering. For years, All Might had been the symbol of peace, the strongest hero who ever lived. Midoriya achieving 120% meant he had officially become something unprecedented, a hero whose power exceeded even the legendary symbol of peace. This realization forced Midoriya to confront his greatest fear, accepting that he was no longer chasing someone else's shadow. He wasn't trying to become the next All Might. He had become something entirely new. The weight of that responsibility, knowing that the entire world would look to him as they once looked to All Might, represented the final stage of his emotional growth. By Phase 8's completion, Midoriya had evolved from a quirkless boy who idolized heroes into the greatest hero who ever lived. His journey from self-destructive desperation to calculated mastery proved that true strength isn't about the power you're born with. It's about how you choose to grow, adapt, and use what you have to protect others. The 8-phase evolution was complete, but Midoriya's story as the world's greatest hero was just beginning. Midoriya's transformation from 0% to 120% full Cowl proves that true heroic power isn't about what you inherit. It's about how you evolve what you're given. Each phase built systematically towards surpassing his predecessor, turning self-destructive desperation into calculated mastery of an unprecedented arsenal. The progression wasn't just about percentage increases. Phase 1's bone-breaking smashes taught him the cost of raw power. Phase 2's full Cowl established sustainable enhancement. Phase 3's shoot style forced innovation through adversity. Phase 4's 20% baseline enabled strategic flexibility. Phase 5's Blackwhip revealed inherited potential. Phase 6's precognitive flight created omnidirectional dominance. Phase 7's complete arsenal delivered tactical supremacy. Phase 8's Overdrive achieved planetary-scale impact. What makes this evolution unique is how each breakthrough required both technical mastery and emotional growth. Midoriya didn't just learn to control more power, he learned to accept responsibility for 8 generations of heroic legacy while forging his own identity as the greatest hero who ever lived. If you enjoyed this breakdown of character power progression, check out my analysis of anime characters with the highest body count.